Let's start what we have come into the room to
This is FlipTV Originals. Afrobeat is now everywhere. From Lagos to London, from Ojuelegba to the Oscars, from street parties to stadium tours, it is the sound of a generation, a global movement, a billion-stream genre. But this didn't start with luxury cars, world tours, or Grammy wins. It started with rebellion, with resistance, with rhythm as revolution. Before Wizkid sold out the O2 Arena 3 nights in a row, before Essence topped Apple Music charts across continents, before Afrobeat became a global pop culture export, there was Fela Kuti, a man who didn't just make music, he made enemies, movement, and history. This is the story of how Afrobeat became Afrobeat, how protest became pop, how Lagos became global, and how two Nigerian legends separated by decades shaped the sound of Africa. This is From Fela to Wizkid, the sound that freed Africa and took over the world. Before Fela, African music, before the revolution. To understand Fela, you must first have to understand the Africa he was born into. Before the 1960s, African popular music was deeply rooted in traditional rhythms, highlife, palm wine music, juju, fuji, folk chants, and indigenous storytelling sounds. In Nigeria, highlife dominated the urban clubs. In Ghana, guitar-driven dance music ruled. Across West Africa, music was entertainment, not confrontation. Politics existed, colonialism existed, oppression existed. But music rarely challenged power directly. Artists avoided trouble, government avoided criticism, radio stations avoided controversy. Then came independence. Nigeria gained independence in 1960, but freedom didn't mean peace. The country soon plunged into military coup, corruption, civil war, poverty, and repression. And yet, the music industry stayed mostly quiet, until one man refused to be silent. Fela Kuti, birth of a revolutionary sound. Fela Kuti was born in 1938 in Abeokuta, Nigeria, into a powerful intellectual household. His mother, Fumilayo Ransom Kuti, was a feminist icon and a political activist who fought colonial authorities and traditional patriarchy. His father was a respected educator. So Fela didn't grow up learning silence, he grew up learning resistance. He studied music in London in the late 1950s, where he was exposed to jazz, funk, and black liberation movement. But it wasn't until he traveled to the United States in the late 1960s that everything changed. There, he met Sandra Isadore, a Black Panther activist who introduced him to the writings of Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, and African revolutionary thinkers. Fela later said, "I used to think music was for dancing, then I learned it was for fighting." And fight he did. He returned to Nigeria with a new sound, blending traditional Yoruba rhythms, funk grooves, jazz improvisation, call and response vocals, and long instrumental arrangements. He called it Afrobeat, not Afrobeats, Afrobeats. This wasn't club music, this wasn't party music, this was protest music. And Nigeria had never heard anything like it. Music as a weapon, Fela versus the state. Fela didn't whisper, he shouted. He sang directly about corruption, police brutality, military dictatorship, colonial mentality, and African self-hate. Songs like Zombie, mocking the Nigerian military, Sorrow, Tears, and Blood, exposing state violence, authorities stealing, calling out corrupt leaders, international thief, attacking global exploitation. He named names, insulted generals, he exposed the government. And Nigeria's military regime responded with violence. In 1977, over 1,000 soldiers stormed his home and commune, the Kalakuta Republic. They burned it down, beat residents, raped women, and threw Fela's mother from a window. Injuries that later led to her death. Instead of silence, Fela released more music. Instead of apology, he released more albums. Instead of retreat, it became louder. He carried his mother's coffin to the gates of the military headquarters in Lagos, a symbolic act of protest that shook the country. And still, it didn't stop. Fela was arrested over 200 times in his lifetime, beaten, detained, banned from radio, targeted by propaganda. Yet his concerts, known as shrine sessions, became underground political rallies. People came not just to dance, but to learn, resist, and awaken. For Fela, Afrobeat wasn't entertainment. It was resistance in reading. Fela's musical DNA, why Afrobeat was different. Musically, Fela broke every rule. While Western pop songs were 3 minutes long, Fela's songs stretched for 10, 15, sometimes 25 minutes. Why? Because Afrobeat wasn't about hooks. It was about hypnosis. He built songs in layers, percussion grooves, bass riff, horn stabs, call and response chants, extended instrumental solos, political spoken word sessions. The beat never stopped, the rhythm never softened, the message never blurred. He sang mostly in Nigerian pidgin English, not polished drama. So everyday people across Africa could understand him. Fela wanted his music to belong to the street, not the elites. And across Africa, the message spread. Soon, Afrobeats became not just a genre, but a political identity. After Fela, the silence and the shift. Fela died in 1997, and with him, Afrobeat, the original, seemed to fade from the mainstream. Nigeria in the late 90s and early 2000s was changing. Military rule ended, democracy returned, globalization arrived, satellite TV, internet culture, Western pop, hip-hop, and R&B flooded Nigerian youth culture. Young Nigerians wanted escape, love, fun, identity, and global connection. They weren't looking for protest chants, they wanted party music, but something remained. The rhythm, the melodies, the African bounce. And soon, a generation of artists emerged, blending African sounds with pop, hip-hop, dancehall, and R&B. Not Afrobeats, Afrobeats, plural. And at the center of that global explosion was Wizkid. Wizkid, the boy from Surulere. Ayodeji Ibrahim Balogun, known worldwide as Wizkid, was born in 1990 in Surulere, Lagos. Unlike Fela, Wizkid didn't grow up in activism. He grew up in CDs, radios, church choirs, and Nigerian pop culture. He observed Two-Face Idibia, Sound Sultan, Face, American R&B, Caribbean dancehall, hip-hop culture. By his teens, he was recording music professionally, and in 2010, at just 20 years old, Wizkid exploded into Nigerian consciousness with Holla at Your Boy. This wasn't protest music, this was party music. Clean hooks, smooth melodies, youthful confidence, radio-friendly vibes. And Nigeria was ready. From local star to African icon. After his debut album, Superstar, Wizkid became one of Nigeria's biggest artists almost overnight. But he didn't stay cool, he evolved. With Ojuelegba in 2014, Wizkid shifted from pop star to storyteller. The song reflected his struggles, growth, and Lagos street journey. Drake noticed it, global audiences connected to it, and suddenly Nigerian music crossed borders. Then came Come Closer, One Dance with Drake, Brown Skin Girl with Beyonce, Essence featuring Thames. Each collaboration expanded the reach of Afrobeats. And with Made in Lagos, Wizkid delivered an album that wasn't just popular, it was culturally defining. For the first time, Afrobeats didn't sound like world music. It sounded like global pop. Afrobeat versus Afrobeats. What really changed? Fela's Afrobeat and Wizkid's Afrobeats may sound related, but they serve completely different purposes. Let's break it down. Fela's Afrobeat. Long songs, heavy instrumentation, political lyrics, aggressive rhythms, protest driven, live band focused, minimal digital production. Wizkid's Afrobeats. Shorter songs, smooth melodies, love and lifestyle themes, streaming friendly, club ready, digital production, global collaboration focused. Fela made music to challenge power. Wizkid makes music to connect cultures. But both share African rhythms, Nigerian identity, global ambition, and cultural pride. Fela fought to free minds. Wizkid sells African joy. Both are revolutions, just different generations. The cultural shift from rebellion to representation. The African Fela lived in needed resistance. The Africa Wizkid needs representation. Fela wanted Africans to wake up. Wizkid wants Africans to shine. Fela wanted to expose corruption. Wizkid wants to export culture. Fela challenged the system. Wizkid mastered the system. This shift reflects Nigerians' youth reality. Modern Nigerian youth are globally connected, internet-driven, entrepreneurial, brand-focused, and culture-forward. They want freedom, but also luxury. Struggle, but also success. Roots, but also rich. And Wizkid sounds captures that perfectly. Global takeover, Afrobeat conquers the world. By the late 2010s, Afrobeat was no longer Nigerian music. It became global music. Wizkid sold out London's O2 Arena 3 nights in a row, Madison Square Garden, Paris Akron Arena. SS became the first Nigerian song to chart on the Billboard Hot 100, a global summer anthem, a Grammy-nominated track, a soundtrack to weddings, vacations, and playlists worldwide. And with artists like Burna Boy, Davido, Tems, Rema, Aresta, Ashake, Afrobeats became Africa's most powerful cultural export. But none of this happens without Fela. Because before the world listened to Nigerian music, Fela forced Nigerian to listen to itself. Fela's shadow, how his DNA still lives in modern Afrobeats. Even though modern Afrobeat sounds different, Fela's influence is everywhere.
Burna Boy's
Horns, arrangement, percussion grooves, call and response vocals, Afrocentric aesthetic, and political consciousness in some modern lyrics. Artists like Burna Boy openly credit Fela as inspiration. Burna's grandfather even managed Fela's band at one point. Songs like Monster You Made, Collateral Damage, Another Story echo Fela's protest spirit, but in modern production. And while Wizkid doesn't center politics in his music, his cultural dominance itself represents power, African power on global terms. Icon status, Fela and Wizkid are symbols. Fela became a symbol of resistance. Wizkid became a symbol of success. Fela represented African liberation, radical truth, cultural defiance, and revolutionary art. Wizkid represents African excellence, soft power, cultural exports, and global dominance. Both are culturally monuments, not just musicians. Fela has statues, Broadway plays, museums, documentaries, and academic courses. Wizkid has sold out arenas, chart records, fashion campaigns, Grammy wins, and global influence. One fought government, the other conquered charts. Both changed history. What if Fela met Wizkid? Imagine Fela alive today. Would he approve of Wizkid's smooth love songs? Would he criticize the lack of political messaging? Would he respect the cultural dominance? Truth is, probably all three. Fela once said, music is a weapon. Wizkid proves music is influence. Fela forced people to think. Wizkid makes people feel. Both move the world, just in different ways. The sound that freed and ruled. From smoky underground clubs in Lagos to sold-out arenas in London, New York, and Paris. From protest chants against military dictatorships to love songs topping global streaming charts. African music has traveled a powerful journey. Fela Anikulapo Kuti didn't just create a genre, he created a movement. Wizkid didn't just globalize Afrobeats, he normalized African sound in world pop culture. One fought the system, one mastered the system. Together, they represent two eras of African excellence, rebellion and resonance, resistance